It really was a momentous moment. For me personally, like I have such a varied career background and like I dropped out of high school, I dropped out of college. I've done a lot of different things in my life. There was a point in time where sewing for me was like the equivalent of waiting tables. It was like how I made money on the side. I don't know, it just felt like getting to do this with these women brought together so many skills I had honed in ways I never would have expected to use together all in one place. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to like do all these weird, crazy things all in this one company, all for this one purpose.
I'm Sari Mitnick, and this is Seamwork Radio, where we tell stories about the surprising ways that sewing impacts our lives. There's something inherently hopeful about the act of sewing. With each creative choice, each step in the process, you really inch closer to making this object that's in your imagination a reality. And I think this is part of what draws us together as makers. I sometimes wonder how this shared experience of hope really bonds our friendships and helps us to become more resilient. That was certainly the case for artists and fabric designers Melody Miller, Alexia Abig, Kim Kite, Sarah Watts, and Rashida Coleman Hale, the founding designers of Cotton and Steel and Ruby Star Society. Their shared passion for sewing and textiles changed the landscape of quilting fabrics. But it was their friendship, their deep respect and trust, that really helped them to forge onward through a bunch of trials and triumphs. Here's Haley Glenn as she discusses this journey with Melody, Alexia, Kim, Sarah, and Rashida.
Meet Melody Miller. If you're a fabric nerd like me, you might be familiar with Melody's work as a textile artist. Her colorful fabrics combine vintage inspiration and imagery with perfectly cool and quirky colors to create an effect that is truly delightful. Melody is as sweet and smart as her work would lead you to believe. In addition to being an amazing artist, she is also one of the founding designers of Cotton and Steel and later on Ruby Star Society. Like a lot of good ideas, the idea of Cotton and Steel was conceived to solve a problem. Even though Melody had a thriving career in the fabric industry, she wasn't bringing home a sum of money that reflected her success.
2012 was a big year for me in fabric design. I had kind of checked the boxes for the industry. Like I'd had these booths at Quilt Market, like I'd had these really nice displays, and I'd written a book and my fabric seemed to be very popular. And, I was getting kind of good industry press coverage. And at the end of the year, or actually at the beginning of 2013, I just looked back and realized I had done all of those things, but my income was still really low. And it was really just a matter of working for a very small fabric manufacturer. When you're doing licensing, you're paid usually a percentage of the fabric that's either printed or sold by the yard. And so if it's a small company, they're just not going to print or sell tons and tons of fabric. So it seemed that the best solution for me was to try to shop around and find a different manufacturer to work with.
In early 2013, Melody began casting her line while at conventions with her pal and fellow artist, Rashida Coleman Hale. Word traveled, and soon enough, Melody began chatting with other designers and companies. Then, a couple weeks after the convention, she received an email.
I received an email out of the blue from RJR. At that point, I didn't even know who RJR was. I had not heard of them. And they were asking if I might be interested in designing for them. And it just felt like, it didn't feel like the right match. My style was so modern and their style was quite traditional, and it didn't make sense to me.
Even though at first it didn't seem like the match she was looking for, Melody sat with the notion until she had a total aha moment.
And then after, a week or so of just sort of chewing on this, the solution dawned on me. Like, one modern fabric designer is not going to do the trick for this company. They need so much more. Like, a new brand could work. If they have the infrastructure to support a new brand, I could bring that. Like, it could be a fresh start. And also, it can't just be me. It needs to be like at least 3 to 5 designers, I was thinking. And suddenly I could see this picture of how this could actually work, but it also seemed at the time crazy. Like nobody was doing this. It just seemed like such a huge undertaking.
RJR offered to fly Melody out from her home of Atlanta, Georgia to Los Angeles for a meeting where they could pitch themselves to her. What they didn't know is that Melody was preparing her very own counterpitch about what she could bring to the table beyond herself as a fabric designer. She began contacting people in the fabric industry, the people that she admired and considered to be her most trusted colleagues. There was Rashida Coleman Hale, a fellow fabric designer, author, and friend of Melody's. Rashida had released her second collection with Cloud9 Fabrics and was really content where she was, but excited by the possibilities of what Melody had pitched to her. Alexia Abeg was a sewing veteran who had done a huge range of work in the sewing industry, from working for designer Anna Maria Horner to opening up a sewing studio and pattern company and writing her book, Liberty Love. When Melody called her, she instantly knew it was something that she wanted to be involved with. Kim Kite was the writer behind the popular blog True Up. She was interested in manufacturing cool, unique fabrics like the one she wrote about. Kim was an industry expert who really had her finger on the pulse of the fabric industry. Sarah Watts came from the world of licensed art. She cut her teeth at Carter and Oshkosh, then moved on to a career with International Greetings before taking a chance on freelance life when her first fabric deal was struck with Blend Fabrics.
I got really interested in this world after getting that Blend contract because I realized how amazing the community was and how together it felt and how everyone kind of shared with each other and connected in a different way than the lonely world of being a licensed designer by yourself, kind of just finding jobs and working in your own studio or whatever.
This kind of positive environment that Sarah is talking about really set the stage for the budding bond shared between these women. In addition to the culture of the industry, they all shared a unique interest in not just sewing quilts, but sewing clothing as well. Kim knew they could create something unique and special if they could bridge the gap between quilting and garment sewers and create something that honored both.
I have continued to sew and quilt, and equally too, and I think that's true for all of us, that we entered the quilting industry, but we have always been, all of us have sewn garments and accessories and quilted equally. Yes. And that's really what we wanted to bring, was a company that served all those interests.
And she wasn't alone in those feelings. Melody recalls that this was a key part of their initial conversations.
That was Alexia and Kim's feedback when I first talked to them, was like, we need some fabric for sewing garments in this industry that aren't just quilt patterns printed on garment substrates. And it felt like a huge light bulb. Like, of course we need that. Like, that's so smart. Like, and it felt like there was, like, that was a particular need that we could serve straight out of the gate.
With her team assembled, shared goal, and counterpitch prepared, Melody flew out to LA. I asked her to share her elevator pitch with us.
I understand why you brought me here. You want to get into the modern design industry because you see that there's a future there. And I'm here to tell you that you can't go there with just me. You need something more than just me. You need a brand. You need a trusted brand. People aren't going to look to RJR Fabrics for modern fabric, but you could, together with me, we could put together a new brand and introduce not just myself, but a whole group of modern designers to speak directly to the modern industry.
Even today, Melody's speech fills the room with inspiration and joy.
Boom.
Slow clap.
Yeah,
I was clapping too.
like, oh, so
Sign me up.
I got all impassioned. I'm like, oh, man.
Sign me up.
Right?
I'm in.
I would literally invest into that
Right. Where's my credit card number, Melody?
Melody pitched a division that could bring RJR to the modern market and create fabrics for quilters and garment sewers alike.
There were actually tears in the room. It was one of the most shocking days I'd ever had. Like, I was so nervous. I had never done anything like this in my life. I was so nervous and gave this whole presentation, and they were like hugging and crying that day.
The folks at RJR were sold. Melody and the rest of the Cotton and Steel ladies were off to the races. The first order of business was designing their first collection. In June 2013, Melody, Rashida, Kim, Sarah, and Alexia all met in Los Angeles to collaborate on their first batch of designs.
We came together with the start of our collections and holed up in a hotel conference room. We brought all our computers and printers and just took over this conference room. We spread hotel sheets out on the floor because there are these insane beige patterns everywhere, and we just needed some white space. And
Yes.
we were just printing pattern after pattern out of this like not very exciting office printer, but it was the best we had, and like laying them all out on the floor and like just starting to look at how our collections could work and how they could work together.
The team was hyper-focused on something unique and spectacular. This passion fueled the bonds that they were beginning to create. Rashida reflects.
Even from day one, like there was this huge bond, and I was just astounded by how well we worked together. And sometimes not everyone has the same sense of humor and stuff, you know, but I felt like it all just meshed so well. It was kind of ridiculous.
As the women share their memories from that first week together, it is clear that that moment solidified and validated the path that they were forging together. It wasn't just about the artwork or the fabric, but also about this connection that would unite them through victory and defeat. Alexia remembers a night that they were up late, artwork scattered across the floor, trying to squeeze in an extra couple hours of work.
And we're all just sitting there on the floor and just laughing about everything, and all of those little kind of intimate, inside jokey moments that can happen when you really mesh with someone. Like, I feel like that was all happening for us that evening, and telling stories and joking about old nicknames and who even knows what, like, but just laughing in that way that's like the way that people who've known each other for decades laugh together.
And when the week was over, they were sad to leave.
I remember sitting outside the hotel that we stayed at the very end, like waiting to go to the airport, and just feeling like I had just gone to like camp. And I was like having to leave my best friends.
Yes.
At camp, and like we're all going to split up. But then we did it. Like we get to work together.
When they left LA, they still had a lot of work ahead of them. But that bonding experience really solidified the personal and creative bond that had formed between the women. That fall, they introduced the Cotton and Steel brand at Quilt Market, but the fabric itself didn't debut until the following spring. Quilt Market is this huge industry event that happens twice annually. It is at this industry convention that companies and designers debut their latest collections and buyers shop the latest offerings.
We introduced our first collections in Pittsburgh, and that's the one that I remember as just being so powerful. Like, they both were, but that one was just, man, we had worked for a year at that point, and it just felt amazing to finally be able to show people what we'd been working on for so long.
Since that week in Los Angeles 9 months prior, they had invested countless hours developing not only the fabric lines, but also their brand identity. Cotton and Steel was literally a ground-up build that they invested in because they knew what a huge opportunity it was.
Many of us worked for that entire year that Melody was talking about for free, because we knew what an opportunity this was that was being created together with this company. And we invested our time. And so, yeah, that Pittsburgh market was just like, oh my God, we did it.
And all of that hard work didn't just stop when they arrived in Pittsburgh.
Packed my sewing machine on that trip. Yeah.
That was the other thing that I loved about Alexia is that she had like 4 houses and 2 suitcases. I was like, this woman is magic. I can't quite explain it, but how did she Mary Poppins all that crap into 2 suitcases?
Oh, that was some epic packing, definitely.
Yeah. And then it was like, oh, I just sewed like 5 wedding dresses out of our fabric in like 3 weeks. Here you go.
That was so fun.
Coming to your room every market when you have like your machines already set up, all of the garments already hung up in all over the walls and the beds, and then each of us get handed a quilt to baste.
Uh-huh.
And then you put the binding on this one, and here's snacks, and I've got wine, and let's talk.
Yeah. Like, I'm prepared. I know what we need to work this hard. We need the support of wine.
Quilt Market is a kind of industry touchpoint each season. Designers will often give talks or presentations, but the real centerpiece of the show are the sometimes elaborate booths that designers build to showcase their latest collection to potential wholesale buyers and others in the industry. And every square inch of their booth was accounted for. Their booth wasn't only chock full of lovely fabrics and quilts, but also garments. Rashida recalls one particularly magical moment.
And the setting couldn't have been better. I mean, it had natural light in that convention center, and it was just perfectly staged. And there's one wall we had, the swatch wall. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there was an air current that passed by our booth right by the swatches, and they were just floating up and down and doing this really amazing, beautiful swatch trick. And
Yeah.
I remember people being like, whoa, what is going on there? That's awesome. And we're like, we planned that, you know.
I'm a person that believes in fate, and in talking to these women, I feel like their connection was fated, and that all of their life and professional experiences had culminated to this big, beautiful moment filled with joy and pride, and that all of their individual journeys had come together to inform a new, exciting path together.
It really was a momentous moment. For me personally, like, I have such a varied career background, and like, I dropped out of high school, I dropped out of college, I've done a lot of different things in my life. There was a point in time where sewing for me was like the equivalent of waiting tables. It was like how I made money on the side. I don't know, it just felt like getting to do this with these women brought together so many skills I had honed in ways I never would have expected to use together all in one place. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to like do all these weird, crazy things all in this one company, all for this one purpose.
Still, nearly 7 years later, you can hear the excitement and pride that they must have experienced in that moment in their voices. And over the coming years, that excitement about their mission and about one another held strong even when the rest of it crumbled around them. Coming up, Melody, Rashida, Kim, Sarah, and Alexia rebuild their dream after parting ways with RJR.
And then, you know, for me, the thought of trying to shop around and find another home, again, I was like, I don't want to do that alone, you know. I didn't want to continue working in the industry unless I was working with these 4 ladies, and I think the rest of the group felt the same way.
Yeah, it was inconceivable to me that we would break up.
Yes, absolutely.
This podcast is created by the team at Seamwork. We're here to help you design and sew your own wardrobe. You can check out our patterns, classes, and community by visiting us at seamwork.com. If you like the idea of creating your own wardrobe but really struggle with actually making things that you want to wear, check out our free downloadable sewing planner. It's available at seamwork.com/go/planner. It's a totally free printable PDF, and you can use it to help you create a small collection of pieces that fits your style and your real life. It'll help you to define your goals, create a palette, design some looks and then create a queue of projects to sew. Just visit seamwork.com/go/planner, enter your email address, and then we'll send it to you right away. We'll also send you a series of emails that gives you some tips and actually helps walk you through using the planner. So again, that URL is seamwork.com/go/planner, or just check for the link in the show notes.
Melody, Alexia, Rashida, Sarah, and Kim had built Cotton and Steel, a subdivision of RJR that they had founded from the ground up. The result was a brand and product that rocked the fabric and sewing world.
It felt like for me too, all the skills that I had learned along the way of trying to figure out who I am and where I want to be, like it finally was like, okay, I get to use this now. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm hanging out with people that I love, It was so,
Yeah.
It
It
couldn't
was
be
that
better than
feeling-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that feeling of having made it. Like
Yeah.
having dreamed of doing something big and then actually being in the moment of the big thing. Like it was just felt so exciting. Like almost surreal.
Yeah, we were filling this void that we had seen, and it was so exciting that it was in such a big way, in such a professional way, and well thought out and
polished.
They had built something that they were so incredibly proud of, something that they poured their hearts and souls into. In 2016, they began experiencing the instability and financial repercussions of some internal issues at RJR. After 2 years of trying to reconcile, the women finally decided to part ways with the company. This meant leaving behind Cotton and Steel, the brand they had worked so hard to create. They were devastated. Despite their feelings of desolation, they still had a public commitment to fulfill with Cotton and Steel before they could move on to the next chapter of their journey. It was like they had their feet in two separate realities. One where they had to put on a smile and promote their latest collection with Cotton and Steel, and one where they had to answer the question, what next?
I think poor Melody, though, because she really was trying to fan the flames, and we were all so exhausted and depleted and angry and like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not an inspiring group at that point.
Yeah, she's like, well, do you want to be a designer still? I don't want to be a designer anymore.
It was really hard to imagine what this new thing was going to look like and how that was going to be a healthy space for any of us.
Leaving Cotton and Steel behind was traumatic, and as much as they all loved their craft, the experience had them doubting it all. But speaking to the women, you can tell deep down that they knew they would end up sticking together one way or another.
The idea of sticking together, if we were going to stay in fabric, that was never in question.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, what's this going to look like now?
It is really evident that they simply didn't want to do it if they couldn't do it together. Rashida reflects.
For me, the thought of trying to shop around and find another home, again, I was like, I don't want to do that alone. I didn't want to continue working in the industry unless I was working with these four ladies, and I think the rest of the group felt the same way.
yeah, it was inconceivable to me that we would break up.
Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They were working against the clock, trying to come to some kind of solution. They knew they wanted to stick together, and they also wanted to be able to salvage some of what they'd built, namely their studio space and employees.
We were heading toward May Market in 2018. We were also heading toward the end of our studio lease in Atlanta, which is where at the time I worked, and Sarah was also working in that space at the time, and we had 2 employees for Cotton and Steel, and I really wanted them, the 2 employees, to continue to be on our team, and I really wanted to keep our space, and I just felt like if we can pull this together in time, we don't have to dismantle everything and then just go rebuild it all again. Like, that's just going to be such a hassle. Like, can we just keep what we have? Like, can we salvage what we have? And so as we were creeping toward May, our lease was up at the end of May and market was at May, and we were making our public announcement that we were finished. And it just felt like a ticking time bomb. And right at the very last moment, we struck a deal with Moda and had terms that everybody was happy with and had a different structure.
Then a new opportunity arose.
So I had been pitching and I had gotten really close a couple of times and nothing quite was working out. And it was feeling like I was starting to feel a little panicky. Like, I don't know what else is left in terms of opportunities. And someone I knew in the industry had said, you really need to talk to Moda Fabrics. They're so great. Like, they're lovely. And I think that they would be a really good fit. And I could not picture it because Moda has such a Moda brand and they're so successful with that. Like, I almost just logically couldn't imagine why they would want to do anything else besides the thing that they do really well. And so I a little bit ignored that advice, but then that person called me again and was like, you have to talk to them. And if you don't, I'm going to just tell them to call you.
This time, things got off on an entirely different foot. Melody and the designers took a new approach.
The difference was, like, the last time we had a lot of confusion, like, about roles and responsibilities. Like, I think that we had, like, pretty messy boundaries about who did what and when, and there was, like, unspoken expectations, and all of that needed to go. Like, we needed clarity, we needed focus, we needed everything laid out very clearly. And most of all, I did not want anyone to feel taken advantage of or asked to do anything unfairly or for free.
Finally, they were able to land on terms they all agreed to. Terms that honored each member's work and allowed them to keep their studio and one of their team members.
We started with Ruby Star Society as David and I are employees of Moda. I'm the creative director, and we have these 4 other designers, and they're designers and they're compensated for their artwork, and we're not asking people to do all these little jobs of the company. We're not saying, like, oh, we need you to come out for 2 weeks and plan this booth for free.
Yeah.
Essentially, we kept doing the same thing we were doing, but with a mother company that had so much experience and so much knowledge and so much data, and just approached everything in a very professional, business-like,
non-emotional
manner. Yeah.
Non-emotional.
Yeah, and I feel like we've been able to really thrive with that, because that's all we wanted, and we just didn't even know that it was possible.
It's amazing what a foundation of trust and clear boundaries can create. The sense of security and relief is profound, and this stability allows them to connect in deeper ways to their art.
They trust us to do our most professional work. That's why they wanted us in the first place. We do that. They're happy. We're happy. I feel like I've had time to make art again, and I haven't felt that way in a few years now. It's been absolutely incredible to have bandwidth to do my best creative work and not just pull together another collection under deadline.
Oftentimes, so much emphasis is placed on professional advancement that personal fulfillment is ignored. Alexia found that by freeing herself of that, it ultimately helped her to unlock her creativity even further.
I thought that being an important part of the inner workings of a company would give me a place of importance in my career that I needed. And I think I really put that to the test with Cotton and Steel, and I stepped away from it, and I don't have any of the same responsibilities that I did at Cotton and Steel, and I don't have the level of involvement that I did there. And for me, that has completely freed me up to explore art and explore my creativity. And thank goodness, at the worst of the worst moments, of cotton and steel falling apart, I took a pottery class, and it completely reinvigorated my love of making art and being creative in every other facet of my life as well, of making fabric designs, of sewing, trying hobbies, cooking.
Now that they've settled into their more clearly defined roles, they're starting to swing back to find that sweet spot where defined roles and collaboration meet.
There's room to be more collaborative. There's room to be more engaged with this. And like, it just needed to feel safe again. Like, everybody was in the right headspace for that.
Having the space to take some very well thought out risks. I know personally getting to do an entire woven collection has been on my dream list forever. And it's because of our home at Moda that I got to do that. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And what is it? Oh, selling like hotcakes. Just wanted to point that out, baby.
The thing that sticks with me most after talking to these women and hearing their story is the strength that we can find in friendship and also in creativity. I can't imagine this story having the same outcome if it wasn't for the passion that they had for the work they do, or each other to lean on. And that magic, the magic that creativity sparks within us, it isn't lost on them.
Part of the magic of designing fabric is that you, as a fabric designer, are just one small part of the process of creativity that will make something unique in the end. And there's a relationship there that's so special. And it's such a gift to get to be the beginning part of that, you know? We have no idea what these things are going to become. And that relationship, it's amazing.
Yeah.
To see all this work that we put into our fabric, and then someone's like, I made my nephew a quilt, and that kid's gonna have that quilt forever, and like, I don't know, and then it's gonna end up in a cedar chest like 50 years from now, and someone's gonna pull it out. Like, I don't know, there's just something so narrative about the whole, basically, that our fans take our artwork and give it new life over and over again.
I hope we can just continue to be our most authentic selves. Like, every single authentic thing that we've done has made an impact, and it's caused a little ripple, and it's because we did things because they meant something to us, not because we'd seen it done and thought, oh, we want that. And I think we have that power. Like, we know ourselves and we trust each other, and we have that power to keep on going and being authentic. And where will that take us? Who knows?
That was Haley speaking with Melody Miller, Alexia Abig, Sarah Watts, Kim Kite, and Rashida Coleman Hale. You can find them at rubystarsociety.com. Seamwork Radio is brought to you by the Seamwork community, and you can find us at seamwork.com. If you have a story to share, send us an email at podcast@seamwork.com. We'd especially love to hear stories from those whose experiences often get left out of the conversation, whether because of race, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, age, or any other reason. Again, that's podcast@seamwork.com. You can find us on Instagram at Seamwork and Seamwork Video on YouTube. We'd love to invite you to join us at seamwork.com. We have an amazing community there, as well as new sewing patterns and classes each month for members. Podcast listeners can get 50% off our unlimited membership, which gets you unlimited downloads from our library of over 150 wardrobe-building sewing patterns. Just visit seamwork.com/go/podcast50. You can also find that link in the show notes. And if you like this podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice. It really helps other people to find the show so they can hear these stories too. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with you soon. I'm Sari Mitnick, and this is Seamwork Radio.